Hit the like and subscribe button if you enjoy the content.
Now we're in the exterior of the Coliseum, walking along. Going to walk to the other side of it, just for a different look. However, could clear this stadium of 40 or 50,000 within 10 or 15 minutes, according to the guide. And they uncovered the marble seating at this part. Where the cross is where the emperor would have sat. So it was the emperor and his closest senators, followed by free Romans at this level. Upper level were the peasants, slaves, and foreigners. And then the top level was added much later, after a fire. And you can see part of the floor recreated. They also would fill this with water to have naval battles. Embedded in the Coliseum wall are coats of arms of nobles, depending on where they sat. Looking from the Coliseum, we're heading towards the Roman Forum next, site of where Julius Caesar was assassinated by the triumphal arch. So we're going to walk up the stairs here so that we can get a bit of a vantage point. Taken from Israel, 50,000 Jewish slaves were forced to build this commemorative arch, which recognizes their defeat, ironically enough. Inside of the ark has Roman propaganda. The relief shows Emperor Titus in a chariot being crowned by the goddess Victory. Of course, weather has damaged some of this. This was the center of ancient Rome. The hill in the distance with the bell tower is Capitol Hill. To the left, with trees, is Palentine Hill. And the valley in between has a path called the Via Sacra, and it runs through trees by this old Senate building and through an arch at the far end to Capitol Hill. Can you just imagine a conquering general heading down this street with his spoils of war? This valley was full of gleaming white marbles covering the buildings, topped with bronze. Just a glorious sight, and amazing so much is still intact. This hall was as long as a football field and was lavishly decorated with gold and bronze ceilings and statues throughout. This was the Basilica of Constantine. There was a large statue of Emperor Constantine on a throne at the very end of this building. The statue was so huge, if you can imagine, his finger would have been the size of a man. Parts of this statue are still in the Roman Museum. This was the center of the Roman Empire, which grew for 500 years, peaked at 200 years, and then declined over the next 300 years. And we're looking at the entrance, the main entrance, the Ark of Titus, which was part of this main complex of the Roman Forum. Interestingly, walking along these original roadways, they think of the city of 1 million people, filled with tribunes, slaves, courtesans, and chariots whizzing around, with wooden vendor stalls all over, lining these streets selling their goods. It must have been quite the sight, and remarkable that some of this infrastructure still remains even today. These bronze doors are the original Roman doors from 17 centuries ago,
still able to open on their own. We're heading down to the next facility to house slaves, or perhaps the brothel where they stayed. This is a burial ground behind this green sheath in the 9th and 7th century.
This building is related to Caligula, not a nice person, because he tortured his enemies and stole senators' wives and was just a very strong man. This site was very important as it honored the Vestal virgins. They were the homemakers tending to the home of the goddess Vesta. They brought water from sacred springs, cooked sacred food, and maintained the rituals in the temple, all honoring this very important Roman goddess. This area would have been off limits to most, as they were the equivalent of nuns in modern day society. This was the circular temple of Vesta, one of probably Rome's most sacred sites, and it was in the heart of the Roman Forum area.
Shiny bronze roofs, rows of statues made.
Julius Caesar was assassinated in 44 BC. He was born in 100 BC. He was popular with people for his military victories and had lots of charisma. He suspended the constitution and ruled like a king, becoming a dictator. Those around him disagreed with this move, and thus the conspiracy and ultimate assassination.
Of Roman civilization, there'd be stalls and people selling things, pickpocketers, you name it, all here, and not far from the spot where Julius Caesar was killed and ultimately his body burned. In the Roman Forum area, there's a Coliseum, triumphal arch, and remnants of city. This is the royal chamber for when the Romans had a dictator in Caesar, when it was no longer democratic, and his throne would be right at this spot here. First Roman emperor lived in this area, and this is exactly the spot where legend has it that Romulus started the first home building Rome. You have to remember, with the sound of sirens, we see Circus Maximus, where they did the chariot races, 12 heats per day at least, and we're seeing the site of where the Caesars actually had their home on top of Palentine Hill. Over the side is Caesar's Forum on Capitol Hill. And here's the old ring. A beautiful sunny day, and we got back to Circus Maximus, Palentine Hill. And now we're going to head off. This is the piazza that Mussolini would use in his time, right across from the Victor Emmanuel monument to the first king of Italy.